at Spar.
You're live with Newzroom Afrika. It's a pleasure to have you with us tonight. We continue our discussion on the political economy of the country. Of course, we're still in studio with Bernstein from the Center for Development and Enterprise, and Sisanda Mbolekwa, who's the WITS SRC president. Sisanda, perhaps let me begin with you. Do you think that the current system that you're going through, and of course it is a very structured system educationally, academically, as you get your degree, will help you answer some of the questions that Anne has raised here tonight?
I think I must admit that I'm privileged enough to be at an institution such as WITS University. Yes, we are on the inside and we will complain about the pressures of WITS University and what they put us through, but at the same time I look at graduates from WITS University, I look at graduates from perhaps other institutions that aren't given the same exposure to a lot of things, and I think they are done a disservice. At WITS University, much like the Vice Chancellor always says at every welcome day when he welcomes in the new ones, he always says WITS is sort of a microcosm of society. Everything happens here. The social justice activists are born there. You've got your entrepreneurs who start their own businesses on campus that are assisted by offices that exist at WITS University. So I think at WITS, it's a microcosm of society. We are taught a lot of things, we're exposed to a lot, which equips us with more of the soft skills that everyone neglects. So at WITS, when you leave with much more than just a degree.
Is it going to come down to that, especially for the graduates who have to fight for these very limited jobs, as you put it, and that it matters where you graduated? Is that the situation that we're going to find ourselves in?
Well, it's nothing new. It matters a great deal where you get your tertiary education. And if you're at WITS, as I was, we're very lucky.
So I've got WITS here. There's a bias. I am not part of this bias, and I will not disclose where I went to university. Yes.
Best university in the country. But, you know, it does, unfortunately, because it is unfair, but it's the reality, it does matter a great deal. So WITS and UCT and one or two other universities are world-class universities, particularly in a number of the departments. But you can go to a university in your hometown and it's not. And often the families scrimp and save and they don't know that they're getting a lesser education. So I'm afraid there is a ranking of universities, and employers in a shrinking market, in a tight economy, look at the top people from the top universities. So I think we've got to talk a lot more about, if you like, the quality of schooling, and the quality of tertiary education. I know a lot more about schooling than tertiary education, but South Africa, I am hoping, if the president is re-elected, one of the things we're certainly going to hold him to is something he mentioned before Nasrec, but he hasn't really talked about properly since then, which is how we reform the quality of basic schooling in South Africa. This is the beginning for so many people, and for so many young people who come from a poor background. We know that this is the way out. It's not inevitable, but if you can get a decent schooling, you've got a better chance of getting to a decent university, you've got a better chance of making it. But if you go to a terrible school, and don't forget how awful most of our schools are, that's it.
But it seems to me that then, if that's truly the case, and structurally, the odds just keep seeming to stack up, at least against a certain group in society. So the inequality that you're talking about, Sisanda, is not going to be addressed or be changed anytime soon, because certainly I don't get a sense that there's a way for especially people who are not doing well economically to be able to break out of that cycle of poverty. I don't get hope that is possible.
I think it begins in the higher education sector. You know, every year in and year out, there's a time in the year where the Minister of Higher Education will call in all the different vice chancellors and propose a fee increase, right? And there are some universities like your WITS and your UCT that will claim that, no, us were research intensive, so we are going to take your proposed fee increment and then we're going to increase it. Or then you have your other universities that are going to just take it as it is. You know, the fact that universities like WITS and UCT can claim a higher stake from the subsidy that they get from higher education is completely wrong. I understand that they want to maintain the quality of education, but what does that mean for Iwusu? Do you know what I mean? So I think it starts with standardization, and that can only happen through government policy making. If they want to bring up the level of education, it shouldn't matter that I'm in a Johannesburg or if I am in Tata. It should be a standardized level of education so that when I'm a graduate from WITS and I'm a graduate from Ewusu, I should not be discriminated against because I went to the graduate that is the university that is in my hometown compared to Esisando who's going to travel all the way from home to be in Johannesburg because she wants the WITS edge.
Under the fifth administration, students especially showed the kind of muscle that they can pull and really get the ear of the highest office in the land. So when we look at the next 5 years, what do you think are going to be some of the main agenda-setting issues when it comes to students like yourself?
I think it's time that we transformed what it means to be a student leader. A student leader should not be defined by my ability to stand in front of the Great Hall stairs and shout Amandla and have to protest in 2019 the exact same way that my forefathers protested in 1976. I think it's an injustice to what we claim to be a democracy in this country. So through that protest action, we have been blessed with the provincial government who then responded to the call that we were making as my SRC and the students that I was leading at the time, beginning of the year when we were facing an issue of student homelessness. Each and every year, each and every SRC inherits the issue of student homelessness and a lack of accommodation on campus because simply our universities cannot cater for every single student. There's a lack of infrastructure there. So we were lucky as WITS because I said again, being at WITS comes with a certain level of privilege and we must admit that. So I was very lucky that the Premier called us in, said, what are your issues? Why were you protesting? We told him that our issues are the fact that our students are sleeping in libraries and toilets in 2019. This can't be. And whether, we told them our issues. They responded to us. They are now giving Wits University 5 buildings to possibly eradicate the issue of student homelessness forever. So when the next SRC comes, there won't be an accommodation-related protest at the beginning of the year. So I think slowly but surely we're getting to a point where government is actually listening to our issues. But now, can they listen to me regardless of the fact that I am a president at WITS? If I'm a president at Univen, I must be given the same level of ear and same attention.
And that's part of the problem, and because you have many TVET colleges. Just earlier on this year, we had administrators and staff at TVET colleges across the country downing tools, and yet you have government consistently saying, we have to show young people that universities are not the only answer, that they need to be getting into more artisanal skills, but they're not putting their money where their mouth is necessarily.
Look, it's a very important issue. I think the quality, the value for money that we get from our TVETs and vocational education is not nearly good enough. Well, the data is not very clear, but we're not getting world-class tertiary education outside some of our universities. And we desperately need that. We need to think afresh. We need to link up those technical colleges much more closely with business and what business needs. And we need to bring in more competition. We need private sector run technical colleges that compete with public sector run ones, and on some kind of level playing field that will increase the quality. And that's what's happening in Brazil, in India, in a number of big developing countries. They're expanding supply of quality education, and they're bringing in big international and local suppliers of that. But you know, we can talk a lot about this. I want to come back to basic education. If you don't start there, we spend a lot of money doing what should have been done at the schools. You've got to help people to, not through any fault of their own, to catch up.
Yeah.
So that's a waste of money. We should be fixing our schools. Yeah. And that means that the next government has to deal with the quality of teaching in our schools. And that means we have to have accountability. And we have to then deal with teachers who don't come to school on Mondays and Fridays, and the trade unions. We have to face up to this elephant in the room, otherwise we're not going to be making any progress for the vast majority of people. Because after all, university students, and there should be more of them in my view, going to different kinds of tertiary education, they're a small elite, and we need them desperately. But the vast majority of people need a much better quality schooling and then a link into work. And we need to create the kind of jobs for the workforce we have, not for the highly skilled one we wished we had.
All right. Well, so it sounds like a plethora of issues that have come up on the table. I must say, I'm not feeling any more optimistic than I was ahead of this conversation, especially when it comes to the fate or what the future looks like right now for young people if the economy does not begin to grow at a faster rate. So I think we'll be looking for more decisive action there, at least from the incoming president, on what exactly the state of South Africa will be and what young people can expect for themselves in this economy. So that's all. We'll wrap it up with this discussion. Coming up in the next hour, we'll wrap up the day's events in terms of voting. It is the final hour of voting, of course. If you have not gone to vote and you're registered, it's not too late. You still have an hour to make up your mind. I think the one thing many of the guests we've had over the last couple of days, they all emphasize the importance of voting, even for those of you who were declaring it National Sleep Day. So please wake up and go and cast that vote. It's very important. Well, News of Crime continues. For now, though, let's take a look at your weather.